Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Purdy Insurance. Visit Purdy Insurance on Market Street in Sunbury or visit online at purdyinsurance.com. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is the Steve Jones Show. Matt Catrillo here with you. Steve will soon be there from the Sunbury Motors Studio. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. And online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, all pre-owned inventory as well. And a great service department and excellent sales staff. That's all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. And every Monday show brought to you by our good friends at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury, or at purdyinsurance.com. Home, auto, life, business. They are the pros pro when it comes to insurance needs, and they are all at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. You can check out their website as well, purdyinsurance.com. And a lot to get to today, a lot to recap from the weekend, from college football especially, and in the NFL. Mark Wogenrich, SI.com, back with us today at 3:35 to break down Penn State, head into the Outback Bowl, which was a surprise to a lot of people. They were one of a few surprises in the whole bowl lineup. Not the college football playoff, of course, but the whole entire bowl lineup, as Penn State will take on Arkansas at noon in the Outback Bowl in Tampa on New Year's Day. So we'll break that down with Mark coming up, get his thoughts on the college football playoff. And then we have Jerry Dulac from the Steelers Radio Network, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at 4:35. Big bombshell report out of nowhere came early in the weekend that Big Ben is quietly mentioning this is going to be his last year with the Steelers. And, of course, the Steelers got the big win yesterday against the Ravens. So we'll get a lot to get into with Jerry coming up at 4:35 today. And also the Flyers have fired their head coach, Alain Vigneault, as the team has just been off to a pretty dismal start, or a dismal stretch, I should say. They were off to a good start, but then injuries have piled on, and things have gone in pretty sour in the locker room pretty quickly. The team's lost 8 in a row. They got destroyed by Tampa Bay last night, 7-1. And so him and Michel Therrien, his assistant, both fired. And looks like a whole host of more changes are probably coming for the Flyers. So Sam Carchidi from the Philadelphia Inquirer is going to join us tomorrow at 3:35 to break that down. Flyers actually back in action tonight. Mike Yeo is named the interim head coach. And so that's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Flyers from there. As far as that goes, it's not surprising. It's not all on AV. There's a lot of underachieving players, and I think it's time for the Flyers to make some more moves on the roster and really blow this thing up. I think it's time. They tried to half do it because they traded Jake Voracek in the postseason towards the end of last year. Got a good player in Cam Atkinson back, but I think it might be time to move on from the captain himself, Claude Giroux, and a few other vets that have been there for a while that are just underachieving right now. This is the time to do it if you're the Flyers. And I think it's also time to move on from the GM, too. I think Chuck Fletcher has done next to nothing, just about, for this team. He's a big reason why the Flyers are in this position right now. And as I said to Steve before, this was the least excited I was for a Flyers season, was this season. Because they didn't give you a whole lot.
Nobody even knows he got fired. Move on. All right,
I mean, that's basically how it is.
I mean, no offense. It's December 6th. Nobody even knows the Flyers made a move. I mean, people are looking around saying, are they playing? All right.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I've been the last couple of weeks, and rightfully so.
But it's perfect for you. You thrive on other people's misery. I mean, you're all about firings. Hirings, not so much. Firings, you love. You thrive on that. I mean, seriously, for the holidays, we're all chipping in at the holiday party to get you a Grim Reaper costume. It's going to be great. What the heck? Suit was able to get a deal on a sickle. It's just great.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. Oh, no. He's a wheeler and dealer. We know that.
That's true. Yeah, I underestimated him.
The ability, the ability of the suit when it comes to the ability to get a dirt cheap sickle, perfect. Kind of a king. All right. So let's start off on a positive note. You're done. I mean, I got to talk to a guy about him getting fired. What do I ask him? This is tomorrow?
This is for tomorrow, yeah. Sam Cartini.
We got Knopp tomorrow. We got, good stuff. All right. We're going to talk.
He'll be the low point of the show. How about that? And then we got Tony Knopp and Neil tomorrow.
He's a great guy, though.
I love
Sam. He's a great guy, by the
way.
Sam's awesome. He's a great reporter. But it's a low-interest story. Mark Wogenrich today, Jerry Dulac today, Matt Leon on your juggernaut Gardner Minshew Eagles.
Oh, my almighty!
But let's get to the positive of all positives today. Jack Goloszewski is 10 years old today. Yes, this is Amy and Gary's son. We know that, obviously, Amy's the heart and soul of the Tom McGrath tailgate. It's also the Tom McGrath half-birthday today.
All right.
Okay. All right. It's a half-birthday. And we've been doing review. Gary's performance review came up on the tailgate. Actually did pretty well, to be honest with you. But, you either get better or you get worse. You never stay the same. Right? We're trying to keep Gary above the Mendoza line and the better. Okay. But their son Jack, who's just, you want to talk about one of the nicest guys going. Good athlete, good golfer too. I mean, I'd say he's out there playing golf against the suit. I'd make Jack +8. Jack would and he'd be nice enough to look for the suit's ball. Mr. Suit, where's your ball, Junior? Yeah, I'm in the fairway, Mr. Suit.
Fouled. That spells foul.
You know that short grass where the ball just sticks out? Jack is just so happy 10th birthday, Jack Goloszewski. They don't make him any better than that. Gary and Amy's wonderful son. So happy 10th birthday. That's why I don't want the firing of a coach nobody knows about and a franchise nobody cares about overshadowing Jack's birthday.
Hey, rightfully so.
All right, come on. You opened the show about the Flyers?
Well, I had briefly mentioned the everything with college football, too. I just didn't quite get into more meat of the bone yet.
Oh, yeah, because we got to the part where somebody is going through misery. Misery.
Yes.
I got a voicemail from a different Jack. It's not Jack Goloszewski. The 3:30 break will be a conversation. Okay. All right. Oh, my goodness. Let's see. Looks like we got a bowl game. All right, good. All right.
Yeah, going back to Tampa to celebrate the new year.
I haven't done that game in 11 years. Actually, it'll be 12 years. No, yeah, it'll be 11 years. 2010 season, 2011 Outback Bowl will be the 2022 Outback Bowl. So 11 years.
And number 3 for you, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I think I've told you the story, but the first one I did there was at Tennessee, and they have plexiglass between the booths. So I look to the right, there's the Tennessee booth. And you know Roger Corey, right?
Of course.
And you know how Roger gets.
Yes.
Okay. So we're just in the booth. Now, look, at this time, we do have a fifth person now. It's Brian Tripp. But we're just 4 guys. Okay? There's Roger, there's Bob Taylor, Jack, myself. Okay? And, of course, Brian's now in the field. So he's our 5th guy. So back then it was Jeff Tarman, Roger Corey, Jack, and me. We had 4. We didn't have a sideline person. 4 people. Okay. I mean, how many do you need? So Roger looks over into the Tennessee booth, which is to our right. He goes, holy mackerel, look at all the people in there. I said, yeah, that's pretty crowded. So I mean, here's my assumption. What am I assuming? I'm assuming they've got guests in there, right? So Roger goes and he counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He goes, there are 14 people in that booth. And I said something, well, I'm sure like some of them are just guests or whatever. He goes, no, I'm going to go over and find out. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Now, at this point, exactly what is my interest level?
0.
Yes. I don't care if they got 1,000 people in it. All I care about is like, what will Jack and I be doing here for the next 3.5 hours on the air? Okay. So, he comes back. You won't believe it. There aren't any guests over there. I said, oh, really? Well, what do they have? He goes, well, first of all, I got a play-by-play guy. And I looked over and said, well, that's a good start. Shouldn't
they have that at least? Yeah, one would think.
I said, no offense, it seems like a basic. And they have a color guy. They have 2 color guys.
Okay, right? That's not unusual.
Okay, so
right.
Far not unusual. So play-by-play guy, 2 color guys, right? 2 engineers.
Okay, also not that unusual.
Okay. A director, right? A booth producer, an on-field producer, a field reporter, an audio person with a Parab mic on the field, 2 statisticians, and a spotter for Tennessee, a spotter for Penn State, and a spotter for the officials. Going, wow. I said, it's quite a group. I said, wow. I said, nice budget operation. Well done.
I was about to say, yeah, the rest of that's somewhat excessive, but okay.
Right. Who cares? I don't care if they got 1,000 people. And what do I care what the Tennessee Network
That's
does?
how they roll.
Right? That's how they roll. That's what they love. That's great. I love it. And Bob Kessling does a great job. Replaced the legendary John Ward, and Bob's been great. Okay. Well, about 10 minutes later, Bob comes over into the booth.
Oh, no.
He says, oh, no. He says, well, yeah, he comes over into the booth. And he says, and he's got a little bit of a southern accent, a little drawl. And he says, Steve, Jack? He says, hey, Bob, great to see you, man. That's, last time I saw you was basketball, whatever. And he says, you want to exchange a few notes? I said, sure, Bob, great. And I said, let's run by a couple things, a couple of pronunciations, whatever. And he says, now look, he says, I hope y'all don't get mad at your spotters today, because we're wearing our white jerseys with the orange numerals. They're a little hard to see.
Oh, yes. Now I remember. Yes.
Right? And Jack Ham, slaps me on the back, goes, boom, you're looking at him. And Bob looks over, he says, you spot your own game? I said, yeah, I said, sure, all the mistakes are mine.
Yes, now I remember this story, yes.
So, all the mistakes are mine, yeah, sure. He goes, why is that? And I said, I don't know. I didn't know what to say. So I said something stupid. I said, I don't know, budget cuts. Something like that. I thought he was going to have a coronary. It's no big deal.
This is Tennessee that we're talking about, after all.
I know. Meacham. Look, I got it. Meacham's 11, Swain 7. I still remember their numbers. Arian Foster's 27. I remember all this stuff. Right? I'm okay. We're good. It's like, it's all right. And why I still remember their numbers 14 years later, I have no idea. 15 years later, I have no idea why I still remember some of their numbers. I'm a sick man.
No, you're just good with numbers. I'm the same way.
Holy man. Arian Foster, who had a pretty good run with the Texans.
Yeah, that's a name for you.
Right? Having a decent day, and Tennessee's driving down the field, and then he fumbled. And Tony Davis picked up the fumble and ran it like 70-something yards back for a touchdown. And then Tony Hunt and that offensive line, the last few minutes of the game, closed it out. 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards. Just closed the game out. It's great. That was fun. That was fun. And I got most of the names right. All right, we'll come back with more in a moment. Great to have you with us today. Brought to you by Purdy Insurance on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
You, sir, are my hero.
The weather is getting cooler and the leaves are changing in Central PA. Hi, this is Susan from Purdy Insurance. If your current agent is falling short, it's time to give Purdy Insurance a call. We're a local, family-owned independent agency ready to find the right insurance to fit your needs. You can call us at 570-286-5855, stop in our office on Market Street in Sunbury, or head to our website at purdyinsurance.com to find out what we can do for you.
Me, I don't really spend a whole lot of time on it. It's not anything that we have control over. The Bulls pick what they perceive to be the most attractive teams, and they have a pecking order. So I've been spending my time recruiting, spending my time on bowl practices, spending my time on trying to hire a defensive coordinator, and trying to spend a few hours with my family.
Exactly. Look, you're not going to zero in on Arkansas until maybe, I don't know, pick a date. Maybe start to get a little bit in on maybe December 20th, right around there. Anything you do before then, they're practicing the entire time for the game. No. You lose everybody. There's a point of diminishing returns. I mean, the suit locks in on that Shikellamy opener for months, and you can tell by the middle of the first quarter he's done. It's mentally drained. What the heck? Just make sure you cover Treylon Burks. We're good. Okay? 40% of their pass game goes to one guy. What, you didn't think I did any prep?
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Apologize for the slight delay there as Mr. Ham, I guess he was able to get that court order on the suit extended. What? What? It's just, we looked at it as good news. All right, with that, let's go to the hotline here. Our show brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Mark Wogenrich, SI.com. Mark, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Appreciate it, Steve. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Jack and I were literally just talking about this on the phone about how
Wait, I have to follow Jack Ham? No. Okay, bye. Sorry.
it was a
no, my goodness.
It wasn't an on-air conversation.
Okay. Fair enough.
But we were saying about how it broke Penn State's way, and I think actually not going to this game for 11 years is what really broke in their favor.
Oh, to the Outback Bowl. Yeah, it was funny because I got a friend of mine had reached out to me late last week and said, "Could Penn State go to the Outback Bowl? I heard that they could potentially go to the Outback Bowl." And I really honestly dismissed it because I said, "No, that's not. I don't see how that's conceivable." I had it in my mind though that Wisconsin was 9-3. Once I checked the standings, saw they were 8-4, and I started thinking about it. I thought, absolutely, why not? Especially put 3 teams in the playoff, which are in the New Year's Six games, the playoff, and the New Year's Six games. Iowa then to the Citrus Bowl. Why couldn't they? With your pool essentially for the Outback Bowl and the following bowls being Wisconsin, Penn State, Purdue, Minnesota. It's a great landing spot there. With having really kind of, I guess, essentially competing with Wisconsin for that spot. Are they better positioned to go to Wisconsin or to go to Las Vegas, being the hour earlier? That was one of the things that always struck me is anybody from Penn State really behind the scenes kind of giving a little pause to the idea of playing a game that might end at 2 a.m. on the East Coast?
Right.
I know that might be kind of a mitigating point, and like you said, 11 years since going there, the games that I've been doing, the Outback Bowl, have been really well represented by Penn State people, and I think this energizes the fan base that that had been disappointed by the end of the season.
Yeah, no, I think it does. I think it gave everybody a little extra jump. We're like, okay, which is
gave me a jump.
Yeah, I mean, what the heck? I mean, I already checked the advanced forecast; going to be in the low 70s. I'm like, I'm good. Tell them to kick it off. I'm ready.
Exactly, and it's a great matchup too. It's a first time matchups in bowls are always really interesting to me. Arkansas seems like I hadn't seen a lot of them, but I saw a little bit of the game against Alabama. Took them right to that wire, and that seems like a team really kind of headed in the right direction. Understand Pittman, so I like the way they put that whole thing together, and as you said, the way it came together in Penn State's favor.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think Arkansas is a team I kind of looked at 2 or 3 weeks ago as a possible opponent somewhere. So I've done a little bit of glancing at them along the way. He's done a heck of a job as a coach there.
Yeah,
I mean, because Arkansas was kind of given up for a while.
Yeah, at one point I think they had reached number 8. They had a little bit of that Penn State in them early on. 4 games, reached top 10, and then he's got to run that gauntlet SEC schedule. I think it was Georgia, Mississippi, Auburn in a stretch, or Georgia, Mississippi, Texas A&M, something like that they went into like a really brutal stretch of games. But having come out of the Georgia game, everything else really close. Like Texas A&M, I think it was a one-point game. Like I said, Alabama. 1-possession game. So always first-time games always interest me. Especially with teams that have been playing football for a long time.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So I got to ask you. I thought watching. I'll start with Michigan, then I'll get to Alabama. I thought the Michigan coaching staff, to their credit, put 2 or 3 trick plays in the first quarter. After that big emotional win over Ohio State, Mark, you can tell they practiced something that was fun and different, which then changes the interest level, and I thought that was brilliantly played by them.
Yeah, I didn't consider in that perspective, but you're absolutely right, because we saw maybe a little bit of that, not to that nearly that extent. But the receiver throw for the long touchdown. I mean, I thought they stayed true to who they were the last 2 weeks against Ohio State and Iowa, but blossomed a little bit, branched out a little bit. And I think you're right that I entered that game thinking, can Michigan sustain that level of having just beaten Ohio State for the first time in how many years? and then have to play another game that, at that point is even more important because then now you're playing for something even greater than the Big Ten title.
Right.
And I was just thoroughly impressed with the way they followed one performance with another. I don't think you can say that about what happened in the SEC title game. On either side, Alabama looked like a completely different football team than the one that scored 3 points through 59 minutes against Auburn. Likewise, Georgia. Michigan did not look like a completely different football team those 2 weeks. It looked like it had, since that Penn State game, since they got that kind of almost broken play touchdown to the tight end against Penn State, that play seemed to me almost to revive them in a way.
Yeah.
And send them on a curve, a curve back upward toward the end of the season. I don't discount them in any way in the playoff.
No. There's also something that history is a great teacher, and I probably should have considered this when looking at Alabama and Georgia. If you've noticed, when Alabama has lost, what has the opponent done in recent years? They broke 40. This year, Texas A&M, 41-38. Yep. There's no way Georgia scores 40 on that team. They can't do it with their quarterback.
No, and then I wonder how they respond. From their perspective, would they have wanted the rematch in the playoff? I know the position that everybody from the outside takes is that there's no way that there would be a rematch because you don't want that for television and fans and things like that. But with Georgia, how is Georgia now going to respond, having lost now 7 straight games to Alabama, and having to stew over that for a couple of weeks, and then try to get into a mindset of playing a team that's thoroughly different in Michigan, but always looking toward the horizon again as, we just get one more shot at Alabama. That is not a team to in any way overlook whatsoever. Because I think Michigan, the way they've risen, could beat both those teams on a good day, on their better day.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm watching Bryce Young, and the Georgia secondary is a weakness to begin with. But I'll tell you who was a gigantic disappointment in that game was the Davis kid up front. I mean, they ran him out of gas. They ran him out of gas in the first quarter.
Yeah, and the fact I'm just thoroughly blanking on the receiver, the Alabama receiver Williams. Is that right?
Oh yeah, Williams who played at Ohio State. Yeah, he played against Penn State.
From Ohio State. I mean, when you could go from, this is astonishing to me, and this is kind of, I think, is where James Franklin is looking like when he talks about stacking classes, that's exactly what he means. That if you can go from a room in Ohio State where you are not going to be the number one to leading the SEC, I think, in receiving yards, and having, being a number one at a place like Alabama, that's where those programs, they live in that ether that that James Franklin said it a couple of weeks ago. It's not about just this 22 recruiting class coming in. We got to keep stacking them. We've got to be able to put guys in the field. So when somebody goes down, there's potentially a better player on the field waiting who just might not have the reps behind it, but just actually might be better than the guy in front of them. I see that in Alabama.
Right, and that's what they do. They do stack them. There's just no getting around it. And now with Mechie out, there'll be some other young guy that will step in and play in Mechie's spot.
Right, exactly. When you could flip, Jalen Hurts into in back-to-back years in big games, that sort of thing, you've got a recruiting edge.
So what do you think about Cincinnati and all this? Because they're going to get Alabama.
And I love the fact it's weird because I just have not been able to watch Cincinnati, so I don't know a ton about them. I think, quarterback-wise, would they have the second best quarterback situation perhaps in the playoff? I mean, if you're looking at players if you pick the quarterback that you think can win you a game, are they second among these 4 teams behind Alabama? I mean, Could you make that argument? I don't know. I'm just really happy that they got in there, because I really believe that element has to be preserved in college football. I just didn't want it to become the playoff to become just a tiered format where it's not just the same teams every year, but that there's really no hope for teams like Cincinnati and UCF and Houston going way back, that their margin for error already is just so small that they've got to go into a conference title game and think, okay, we can't just win by 2 touchdowns. So them getting in, yeah, why not? Why can't they give Alabama a game playing in perfect mode?
Right. By the way, just a quick note for everybody. The last time Alabama lost a game where the opponent scored less than 40 was Auburn in the Iron Bowl in 2017, 26-14. It's the last time they lost a game where the opponent scored less than 40.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. I mean, it's amazing. Hey, Clemson beat him, scored 44. Let's see. Auburn beat him, scored 48. LSU beat him, scored 46. Texas A&M beat him, scored 41.
Right. All with quarterback. All with basically number one quarterbacks. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those are the last losses they've had. That you've had to score 40 against them.
Yeah.
To beat them. Wow.
Yeah, and who among the group is capable of doing that against Alabama?
None.
I mean,
Zero.
Is Michigan the best position too? Maybe.
I mean,
but
maybe.
Yeah.
But that's only a maybe.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out there so people understand. Like, what does it take to beat them? You got to score 40.
That's a great point.
I mean, let's start with the basics.
Yeah.
History's the greatest teacher. Obviously, Penn State will get to this game. How interested are you as to, Penn State's, obviously Micah Parsons opted out for a season, but nobody's ever really not played in the bowl game before. Which guys are you eyeing just to see what their decision will be on this?
I think the two most obviously are Jahan Dotson and Jaquan Brisker. Now, I've not really – I was having interviewed Jaquan Brisker and seeing what the team means to him, I wouldn't put in I wouldn't make a guess on him. I got to know Jahan over the years, even covering him back in high school. So I know, personality-wise. I don't know. I don't want to say what surprised me because nothing – that's the wrong term for it. I could see him going, just Jahan in particular, I could see him going either way and everybody respecting that decision going either way.
Yes, he will be respected no matter what.
Yeah. There really shouldn't be I don't think there should be any discussion or just any objection to either decision that he would make. If he plays, if he wants to go down there and play and participate in this game, with that team, I would guess it would be something similar to what Penn State did with Saquon Barkley at the Fiesta Bowl, and that he was, it was reduced reps. They brought him in. He had a couple of, 85, 90-yard carry or whatever that was. But that was Miles Sanders' game. Yeah, for the most part, I could see that being the same thing going on here. And you've got some young receivers who you want to give this opportunity. Looking across the board, that could be, there could be more players. You see, even if they're going and they're there, maybe they're not as not as involved as much. With Jaquan Brisker, I think that's different because he's such. Not that John Dotson is not a huge part of your offense, but Jaquan Brisker is so elemental to that defense, and they don't have. I don't think they have the depth behind that to really fill that. To fill that safety spot, that role he brings. So if he's there, I guess he would probably play more. I'm looking forward to seeing who they bring out. Who are the guys? Who are the guys that are going to play? Is Christian Veilleux going to get some more snaps? In the bowl game? I think it'd be a great opportunity for him to take some reps in that game as well. Because you want him going into this. You want him going into spring or winter workouts in spring with a head of confidence. thinking, they're a freshman quarterback coming in, but don't forget about me.
Yeah. Right. One last question. The first question James got yesterday, once he finally got on there, was about defensive coordinator. Yeah, about Brent to begin with, but the search for a DC. How interesting was that answer he gave?
The second part of it, to me, was the most interesting because, James Franklin knows he's going to replace coaches. It's not that's just in this day and age, he absolutely knows that. So he's got his list. He's probably had a list for a couple of years each time Brent Pry is, taking an interview, or maybe he's got a step toward the door, that sort of thing. It was that second part when he said he called it a significant loss, and this is, personally and professionally, I think for him, a guy he's known for 25 plus years, going back to at East Stroudsburg, and been on the staff for 11 years. I think having that bond, that guy you can lean on. I almost said crutch, but that kind of guy you can lean on, that assistant, that you can lean on, who's not necessarily even an assistant anymore. I think he probably viewed Brent as an equal in their coaching room, and he was just happened to be the boss. I remember last year Brent Pry talked about later in the year about the first time he went over to James Franklin's house during COVID. And then they had lost a couple of games in a row. James's family's not there. He's going home to an empty house, and Brent kind of went over and they said they almost like spent time crying together in a way, just kind of like venting about the situation and bonding in some ways about that. That, I think, is an underrated element of coaching sets. When you spend that much time with somebody over a decade, and you fight with them and fight for them and celebrate with them and argue with them, and that's now that presence is gone. You could be energized in some ways about who you brought in, but who's that guy you're going to want to text? That the first time, when a recruit says, "Okay, we got him," that sort of thing, and or even personally, I don't know. You text something about, "Hey, my daughter got her driver's license." Maybe he's texting Brent about that sort of thing. So I think that that is going to be a really, really, I think, something difficult for him to replace. And looking at it, that he probably doesn't even want to necessarily replace that. It's just now this is something new. I think that's probably be the best way for him to look at it. That now this is staff part 2.
My friend, thank you so much. Appreciate you very much.
Yeah, happy holidays. Appreciate you having me on, Steve. I hope to see you down there.
I'll see you down there, but we'll have you on before.
Okay. Oh, no question. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Yep, stay safe.
Mark Wogerich, SI.com. Another guy that was able to get that court order extended. What? Just want to keep everybody up to date. We have several people in the station asking, how do you get one of those? All right, back with what? Back with more in a moment. Santa tonight, 6 to 7. You're on News Radio 1070 WKFK and also on Eagle 107.
When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle in a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you, the other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over 100 years.